Hello everyone, hope everyone is doing well. What I want to talk about in this video is render passes. Now this is something I don't use that often just because I find that the raw camera filter is just easier to use. I went over that in one of my previous videos, so I'll put a link to that video up there, and if you want to check it out you can. As I said, like the render passes, not my favorite way of doing it, but I will say that I actually did learn a couple of cool things while I was just kind of getting my bearings for the video. So I will be going through every single map that can come out of LUMION and just sort of a quick example, some a little more in depth than others on what the purpose of it is and what it can do. So what we're going to do first is just open up any scene in LUMION. It doesn't matter. It can be your scene, it can be an example scene, whatever works. For this one, I'm just going to use Villa Cabrera because that's what I always do. And what we're going to do is just go hit the render button and then current shot, additional output, just click everything on here. There's the depth map, the normal map, the specular reflection map, lighting, sky alpha, and material ID. Just check them all on, go desktop, and hit 1. And this should take like 30 seconds to render out. So if you haven't done this before, what's going to happen is you see the color goes through like normal, but then you start to see these other maps kind of taking shape. Now, I think that what you used to have to do for LUMION is you have to make your own. And I think that is actually why the styrofoam effect is in LUMION, so that you could make this map, more or less. And yeah, and then that's the sky alpha, so that will cut everything that's not the sky. And then you have the material ID. And that one just kind of spits out. It doesn't really look realistic because the only purpose of it is to cover the areas that have different materials. That's the only purpose that it has. What we're going to do is we're going to open up Photoshop 2021 if you have it. For the tutorial, I do recommend you have at least 2021 because it just came out with a new feature called the sky replacement. And that is kind of what the purpose of the sky alpha map is for anyways. So if you do want to, if you did want to use that, I really recommend that you get the newest version. All right, so first things first, I'm going to open up the color map. So I'm going to go through the two that I think are the most boring first to get them out of the way, and that is the lighting and specular. Oh, just have to click off of that. Lighting and specular. So as you can see, specular is kind of like how the reflections interact with the scene. Like the best way to describe it is kind of right here. You can see just all the reflections. Like you can actually see in this picture, you can kind of see like this little orange glob here, which is the trees, and you can see that better down here. Like the reflections will come in. So the best way that I kind of deal with these is like I just come in here and I go overlay and overlay, and then I drag them to like, I don't know, 20%, something like that, somewhere in that range, and then it just lets you have more control over it. As you can see, like when I do this, like the reflections get stronger. A good place to look for that is right here. So where the reflection of those trees would be. As I drag this up, now the scene does get darker, but you can see that the reflections are coming in much sharper. So there are a couple things that you can do with this. Like you can, let's just turn this off for now. So if you want to focus on just the reflections, you know, maybe like you like everything except this, or you just like this one particular area, then maybe you can put like a color mask on it. You can come up here, grab your paintbrush, just kind of do like this sort of thing. Now, obviously this isn't perfect, but you kind of get the point of like what you can do with it. And yeah, that's just a quick example. Like you can kind of keep this one area and then just kind of, you know, touch the areas up that you don't want change. Like maybe you go like this, something like that. So when you do it like this, you are getting heavier reflections, but yeah. And that's kind of why I find that one sort of boring, just because it's, you know, I find it's not really doing too much. It's just kind of stuff that you can sort of adjust in LUMION. And the same goes for the lighting. So as I turn this up, you can see that the scene will change. So that's just normal, and that's kind of going up. But yeah, there's nothing too special about that. As I said, specular and lighting, just throw an overlay Did I put overlay on both of them? Yeah, so just put them on overlay, change the opacity to like around 20%, just play around with it. If you are, and I said if you are interested in like having certain areas stand out, you can click this button down here and that will make a layer mask. And then when you turn on your paintbrush, you can change like what is invisible. So I think if I go like this, oh, actually, yeah, let me just go like this quickly. So if I go like this, as you can see, like this area, based on what I did, everything that's black will not show up to Photoshop. And if I go white, then I can bring it back in. And that's just a very quick example of layer masks. Yeah, that's yeah, there's nothing too special about that though. So yeah, so you can kind of make your images look a little bit better just by using those two. So I will just exit out of this one for now because I won't be using the lighting and specular again. I'll drag the color map back in, and then now we are going to do the normal map. So we'll drag this here, say okay. Now this may seem a little bit weird. Like this is something I don't really do, but it's kind of the only example I can really think of that like would actually use the normal map that comes out of LUMION. So I wanted to show you guys like some purpose of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down to this kind of half-filled circle here. It says, create new fill and adjustment layer. So what you want is you want one channel mixer and you want one hue and saturation. Now, I believe the channel mixer is supposed to go above the hue and saturation. I don't know if that makes a huge difference, but that's what I do. The last thing we have to do is we have to come in and click this here. So what this is that basically, if you don't have this clipped, then this channel mixer and the hue saturation is going to be applying to your entire picture, like all the layers, where in reality we only want this applied to the normal. So in the channel mixer, you're going to come to monochrome. And if you start doing that, you can see that the lighting will change like so. There was, yeah, and then, I don't know, there was a kind of a weird thing that I found happen with this. And that, oh, I did not mean to do multiply there. So that's normal, and then click on the normal map here, and that's supposed to be the multiply. So as you can see, like this does kind of work. It's letting us adjust everything in the foreground. We're playing around with it. But as you can see, the sky is kind of messed up. So this is going to be the first time that we use the sky alpha. And this is just kind of something that I did just to kind of, you know, sort of do a quick trick or quick fix to it. But there's a couple different ways you can do it. So I'm going to grab my sky alpha and I'm going to drag it here. I'm going to hit Control A so that everything's selected. And then I just hit like Control X just so I know that I got it. I'm going to click on my normal layer. And then I'm going to click on the transparency. I'm going to hit Alt and then click on this. So now I'm inside of the transparency mask. It's Alt and click. It's something for people that don't use Photoshop, that is kind of weird because like I find that that's like not like, I guess like the intuitive thing that you'd try and click, but that's what it is. So when we do that, as you can see, the sky is still black. So we want to hit hit Alt and then click, and then we're going to hit Control I, and we're going to flip it. And now, as you can see, now the only thing that is being affected in this normal map is this white area here. So everything that's black is just going to be completely see-through. And if we go back in this layer, now we can see that kind of worked. The problem I have with doing this is that now it almost seems like there's like a line here. So I'm sure you could kind of like feather it out, but it's just not worth doing in my opinion. But you kind of get that point. So now that is set up though, you know, you want to make things a little brighter. You can kind of play around with this. You can do that. And the other thing you can do, if you click on the hue saturation, you drag this around. As you can see, you do get some kind of like different lighting there. Yeah, this is, I don't know how much I'd actually use this in practice because it seems to me like you could do all this in LUMION and it's probably a lot easier. But, you know, regardless, it is, I think, important to kind of know that sort of stuff because you never know when down the road you may need some of that information. So That's the normal map. It's pretty cool. It's interesting. I think it's probably more interesting than it is actually useful. If there is a use for it that I'm just completely missing, I'd really appreciate it if someone wrote it in the comments, because this is probably the one that I just didn't understand what it did at all. And I did have to look it up, but yeah. So what we will do for the next one is we'll just do a material ID. So we'll drag our color map in, and we'll also drag in the matte ID. So what I like to do is just drag this one down, because you can kind of keep it hidden. Or actually, I guess we'll bring it up just to show this. As I said before, it's like a lot of this stuff, it seems like you could just do it better in Lumion, but just for the purpose of showing, it is kind of interesting what you can do. So get the magic wand. If you don't see it right here, right click it and you'll get more options. You might have one of these ones selected. So yeah, magic wand, or I think you can actually hit W as well, but yeah. So we're going to click on this one, and then we're going to hit shift click and click on that one. So what we have now is we've selected this whole material. So all of that siding on the side of the house. And then while this is still selected, and again, this is what I do. I don't know if this is actually the correct way of doing it. Click back on this layer, and now right click and hit layer via copy. So if we drag this layer back down, as you can see, well, actually, I guess that's not a very good example. If we put it right here, as you can see, we've now created a layer that has just that, like those concrete panels. Because when you click on something like this, all this stuff is selected, but when you click off the layer, you're not actually looking at this. Like you can see, everything is still selected, but now you're on a different layer, but that selection stays the same. So that is kind of important. Like you can kind of save a bit of time doing it. And then, yeah, so we will, maybe we'll just, as an example, we'll just make another copy there. And what I did there is just right clicked in layer copy. So if I turn that off, as you can see, now we have this. And I'll just delete this quickly to get it out of the way. So yeah, this is the part that I don't know. This is, I feel like if you really wanted like different colors, like just do it in Lumion. That is kind of the best way, like for this one at least. That it is kind of neat though. Like I do sort of like playing around with this stuff. So for this one, like you can just do something like a raw camera filter, or just like change the color, but you can like, you know, maybe bring the exposure down. Like if you think that like everything in the scene looks great, except these panels are just like, you know, there's too much of a highlight, you can bring that down. Like maybe just have it stand out a little more, maybe bring the texture out a bit more, and maybe just lower the exposure. You know, that wouldn't look great, but you kind of get the point. So we can just like pull it here, maybe say okay. And then as you can see now, that stuff is standing out a lot more. And maybe if you wanted to have like a certain color just to highlight, like maybe it's like an orange color while you're explaining it to someone, then you have that. And if you, as you can see, you can just flip it on and off here. But yeah, that one is, the material ID is kind of interesting. But at the same time, it's like, I find this a little more cumbersome than it should be, whereas Lumion can just do all that stuff right in the software. But for the last one, I believe this is the last one. Oh, I guess actually we still have to do the Sky Alpha because I only touched on that one. So for this one, for some of you that may not know, there's a new feature in Photoshop called Sky Replacement, and it is quite literally what it sounds like. This is another one though that I think this would have been a lot cooler had this come out before Lumion got the Real Skies. Real Skies is like it's from Polygon, so it's a high level HDRI, or high quality rather, and I just feel like everything looks better in the scene when you do that. Like it'll affect your lighting, it'll affect your mood, it'll affect it just float, like obviously because it's in the scene it looks a lot better. But if you're kind of in a quick bind and you want to change something like that, Sky Replacement does work. So and you go edit, Sky Replacement, and then you get a whole list here. So you know, let's change to something like this. So we'll just hit OK. Now this did work pretty well, but if you kind of zoom in right here, you'll see that there's like this weird overlap going on there. And the reason is because in this mask here, in this mask, as you can see, like it worked pretty well, but you're getting kind of, it's like this haze around the edge here because it's not perfect. There should be sort of like some, I guess, reflection in it. Maybe that's what the effect that it's going for. But what you can do, and this will cause a hard edge, but it's just a quick, like I said, this is a quick way of doing it. I'll drag it like here. I'll drag the sky alpha down to this so that it has its own tab. I'll hit Control A again, Control X, or yeah, Control X to cut. And then I'm just going to Alt click on the sky texture. Or, sorry, I'm going to Alt click on the sky textures mask. And then if I hit Control V, now as you can see, you have those hard edges going around it. And while that kind of creates a slight problem in itself, that now you have this, like, it's a hard edge between the sky and the roof where it should be a little bit more feathered. I think this works pretty well. Like if you go back in here now, as you can see, like we don't have that, that same effect going on. And this scene actually works well with this sky replacement because the scene that we had in Lumion was a sunset, and it was a warm scene. Most of the time it doesn't work that well. Like I find that it's, again, like real skies will just make everything in the scene look good. So yeah, that is the another use for the sky alpha. It is kind of neat to be able to change that around. And you know, you can drop your own sky in the background and just have to make, like, basically make a mask for it. So yeah. Now the last one that I want to look at is the depth map. And this is the one, in my opinion, that I was like, okay, I actually think I'm going to be using that because it does like a depth of field. And I always see people doing this. So the overlay thing. So they'll go overlay and then they'll drag it down. But I was kind of like, what is that doing? Like, yeah, you sort of get this like effect, but I didn't really understand it. Like if it was supposed to be like almost like ambient occlusion, but I didn't think that was it. So I did actually look into this a bit more, and I will show you what I believe the main purpose of it is. If this isn't the main purpose, then I'd love to see what it is, because this one kind of blew my mind that you can do this. So what we're going to do is we will drop this over here so that it's on its own tab. Control A, Control X, go back in, and then we're going to create a layer mask. So that's there. We're going to Alt click on it, Control V, and then now you have a like a transparency mask on it. Now this is not what it's going to end with. This is just how it looks originally, and we're going to make a quick adjustment. There might be a better way of getting it in here. I just find that this is the easiest way of doing it. So we're going to go to Filter, and then we're going to go to Blur and Lens Blur. So when we come in here, as you can see, the scene's now, it's blurry because if it's not working right away, make sure that your source is set to the layer mask, because if not, it'll just look like that. So what you can do is now, as long as the set focal length thing is clicked, click the stairs, that comes into focus. Click the table, that comes into focus. Maybe like put it on the leg here. Can we get this down a little bit more? Yeah, and you can play around with that, but what you can do is you can, like, it's almost like a depth of field. Well, it is a depth of field that you have a little more control over. And personally, this seems like the way to do it. The depth of field as opposed to Lumion. Now, I haven't really tested this too much, so maybe there are some drawbacks to doing it like this, but it is a really cool little effect. Like this one definitely wins the gold medal in my opinion for the coolest render pass that can come out of Lumion. So when we're done with it, let's just focus on this barbecue. We'll hit OK. But as you can see, you're kind of still running into this issue where it's like everything's transparent. So I just like to click on this, and you can either, you know, remove this mask or just bring the density down. But you know, you might as well just bring the density. Like if you click on it, bring the density down, just in case, you know, maybe you need to turn it back on and make an adjustment. And I do believe that it's destructive when you do that. Like if I turn the density up to 100 and then go to blur, lens blur again, it's all, oh, oops. Sorry, you have to make sure that when you do this, make sure you're clicked on this image, not that one. Click on that, go to lens blur again. And then as you can see, if you click like away, like it's still focused. Oh no, that actually worked that time. Okay, well, I tried it before and it didn't work, but okay, I must have applied it. But yeah, you can just come back in and keep making that change. So yeah, that's all the render passes that you can get at Lumion. I am curious if they're ever going to add any in the future. I don't think they are. Because there are a couple that they could add in, but I'm not really sure how much of an impact they'd make, because as you kind of saw through this, some of them are not the most helpful. Like, you know, the specular and lighting are okay for just bringing your image kind of up a level, but at the same time, it's kind of went back to what I said, where it's like I feel like the raw camera filter just works better. Just because the Lumion maps, there aren't a ton of options. Like if you maybe I can actually pull up a quick example here. So this is just a model pack that I bought from a while back, but it actually came with Photoshop files. But yeah, so there's the reflection map. So we have that one. And then this one is a refraction map. So that one's not in Lumion. And then you also have the specular map, the color. Oh, no, that's actually for the wrong one. So you have like, yeah, for this one was just the color map, the reflection map, refraction. And the ones that I thought were actually really cool in this set, it seems like the refraction actually played a pretty big part in it. So yeah, that is something that, I mean, I don't know if they'd ever even really want to add it to Lumion. I'm not even sure if Lumion can do that, because that was, those passes are made with V-Ray. So I think V-Ray may have more ability to do that kind of thing. But yeah, I hope that people found this interesting at least. I will just mention one last time before I go how to get to the. Let me just start over a fresh one here quickly. So yeah, if you just drop this in, you go to filter, go to raw camera filter, and then you just hit auto. You can kind of adjust the temperature, and I find everything comes out looking a lot nicer than the render passes. And this is a lot faster. Like you can go from the finished Lumion version to having an edited version within like less than a minute. So while I wanted to talk about the render passes, I do recommend that you use the camera raw filter for most of your renders, because most of the time you just want to adjust the brightness a little bit, maybe bring the highlights down, that sort of thing. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for everyone checking out the channel lately. It's been a lot of fun making the videos. If you're not already subscribed, I'd really appreciate if you could hit that button for me. And if you are subscribed, I will see you in one of the upcoming videos. Have a good one.